SPED 2010 students, I hope everyone had a great last couple of weeks. I know last week we worked in Module 4, Understanding Disabilities, which was a 2-week module. So we are working in Module 5, which is all about collaboration. And when we talk about collaboration, we're not only talking about family collaboration, we're also talking about community collaboration and what that means to work with people within the community as well as paraprofessionals and other professionals inside the community. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with an overview of what we're going to be doing. So when we're talking about collaboration, it's such an integral part of being an effective classroom and effective schools. Educators today have to collaborate with others. You cannot live in isolation on an island all your own. So what we're really looking at in terms of collaboration is we are going to be looking at what does it look like when we're talking about collaboration between people in the community, in our school, and parents. Also looking at how do you participate in a multidisciplinary assessment team, right, in regards to an IEP when we're developing an IEP. But also really talking about the different categories of disabilities that you learned about in Chapter 4, and thinking about those students you're serving in the classroom and how you can collaborate with the parents and other peoples, because it serves a purpose and a value for you, right? We are going to make sure that we know the unique needs of that child. That way, we can support that child as well as the family. So that's why we did Module 4, Understanding Disabilities first. So that's really the overview. You have the course outcomes here as well as the learning objectives. So our learning objectives are really going to be able to define the term collaboration and identify the purpose and value of collaborative relationships, right? Number 1. Number 2, we're going to be able to explain the benefits of collaborative consultation for the classroom teacher. Third, we're going to summarize the characteristics that distinguish multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary educational teams. And remember, we're focusing this on IEPs. And lastly, you're going to be able to identify the unique needs of parents of children with disabilities that may impact teacher-parent collaboration. So with always inside of your modules, you will have keywords and concepts. I really want you to look at these. These are going to be keywords you're going to see in your chapter textbook, as well as some that you might see within the links of the module. They're important for you to know because, again, they're going to help be able to support you when you're reading to make a connection and understand a little bit better about what we're talking about, but also because it gives you the knowledge to be able to apply concepts and skills. Okay, so looking at the standards, I listed the standards for in-task, teacher preparation standards, as well as the Council for Exceptional Children. So all of Module 5 will cover these 2 sets of standards. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the reading resources, and then lastly, we'll jump into the actual assignments themselves. So for reading, you're going to be doing a couple different things. You're going to first read Chapter 7 inside of your textbook, Teaching in Today's Inclusive Classroom. You're going to read a publication called PTI and CPRCs, as well as looking at Q&A Part B of IDEA. And then lastly, you're going to read some pages in the Tennessee Special Education Framework. So there are lots of components of reading going on here, and I know this is a heavy reading module, but it's important when we're talking about collaboration, because collaboration is such an important piece of an educator's world, and it's important for you to be able to understand these things. So real quick, before I jump into the publications and the Special Education Framework, I wanted to highlight some things in Chapter 7 text that I want you to look at. So we first start out on page 168 talking about 7 core principles of effective collaboration. So make sure you look at those. It just lists it. And then also on page 172, specifically table 7.2, It lists some guidelines for working effectively with paraprofessional educators. Now, paraprofessionals are teaching assistants, and it's important for you to collaborate with them because they are part of your community, but they also help you. They're like your second teacher. So it's important for you to collaborate effectively, and you need to know the guidelines of how to do that. Okay. Then the next thing that I want you to focus on is another table, which is table 7.4 on page 181. And this table specifically talking about what are those key components when we're talking about collaborative teams, right? So what's the philosophy of team interaction? What is the family's role? What role do they play? What are your lines of communication? The assessment process, program development and program implementation. What are those things in terms of those teams we talked about? The multidisciplinary team, the interdisciplinary team, and the transdisciplinary team. So all of this section for teaming models starts on page 179, right? So you're going to read that, and then you're going to look at the table. And it's going to give you a better understanding to meet that objective of those different teams and why they're important. And then we're going to look at another type of collaboration, which is going to be part of one of your course project, which is your co-teaching presentation and plan. So when we talk about cooperative teaching, what does that mean? And what does that look like? So there's several different types of cooperative teaching. Basically, cooperative teaching is for you to work and teach alongside another teacher as yourself in the same classroom, okay? And there's lots of different models we talk about when we're doing cooperative teaching, like one teach, one observe, one teach, one assist or support, station teaching, we have parallel teaching, alternative teaching, team teaching, and there's different types of models in here. It starts on page 182, and it goes through to page 186. I really want you to focus on this section, and you could always relate back to it and refer back to it when you're doing the co-teaching assignment for your project. Okay. So that's really what I wanted you to focus on for chapter 7. Now, as far as the publication that we were speaking about, it's really a wonderful resource. You could read through it. This is something that I would say I suggest you download and save for later. And what it is talking about is PTIs, which are Parent Training Information Center. They're wonderful resources for parents, right? It's like a support group. And then we're talking specifically about CPRCs, which are Community Parent Resource Centers, right? So it's going a little bit in depth and talking about a couple of stories, Barbara and Carmela, and how these centers helped the parents, okay? And then how you could refer your parents or get them in contact. So it's a wonderful resource, so make sure you check that out. The other one was talking about a Q&A, Part B of IDEA. Now, we talked about this when we first went into legislation in the first couple weeks of class, but going back to IDEA, right, Individuals Disability Education Act, this resource is really something else I would encourage you to save, and it's going to talk about the power of participating with parents, right, and parent participation, and how that's such an important role for parents to play, and how that affects you in the classroom. It also really gives parents their rights when we're talking about Part B, such as parent notification. What does prior written notice mean, right? So it refers to messages that the parents receive from the school at any specific time, right? Specifically about the parents wanting to meet, inform you about meetings. It talks about them. What's a meeting, what's not a meeting, what it provides parents with prior written notice, as we talked about, what it is, it explains it, what are the parents' procedural safeguards. Now this section I really want you to pay close attention to, because not only what it might be on a quiz, but it's important for you to know parents' rights, right? They have the opportunity to present and resolve. They have to give their consent for the child to be tested. They need prior written notice. They have the right to call for assessment on their child. So all of the rights here, you need to be able to look at those procedural safeguards, because that's the right of a parent, right? They can have a hearing on due process complaints. That's their right. So just make sure that you check that out as well. And lastly, it wants you to read some pages, 6 pages in the Tennessee Special Education Framework. And I listed this in the Getting Started module as one of your resources. I, again, would save this and keep it. As I've looked, the last time it was updated is in 2018. I'm assuming they're probably going to update it soon again. But as of now, this is the most updated copy we have. This framework is really important for not only special ed teachers, but gen ed teachers to get an idea. And what you're going to be looking at is specifically in pages 11 through 17. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get to that. So pages 11 through 17 are really talking about student and parent involvement, right? And how important that is. It gives you some tips, best practices. It talks about and what are the parents' procedural safeguards, which is what we just talked about a minute ago. So just make sure that you read that as well. That will cover all of the pieces as far as your reading resources. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is something I put on here to maybe help you get a deeper connection with Module 5, which is a Connect video call, which is really neat, and I pull it up here. Dr. Ann Turnbull is really the co-founder and co-director on the Beach Center on Disability. And what she really gets down to when she's talking in this interview is she's describing what the Family Professional Partnership Framework is, and she illustrated some really good practices within that module. So it's not too long. I suggest you listen to it. It's only 3 minutes and 20 seconds long, but I put that in there for you as a resource. Okay. I also have your Chapter 7 PowerPoint and outline. Remember, these go with the textbook. They were offered with the publishing company. I don't suggest you rely on this, because there's a lot of information within the modules themselves. And then I also give you some additional PowerPoints. Again, we want to engage with the content. So I give you another PowerPoint presentation on collaborating with parents, as well as another PowerPoint on parent rights PowerPoint. So if you can't read all this within the week, save these and download them. They can come in useful later on when you have time to look at them. Okay, so let me get some of these resources gone. I'm going to go ahead and I want us to look specifically at the homework. So the homework, you have 2 pieces to do in addition to the Module 5 quiz. The first one is I want you to go through the IRIS module on family engagement. Now, the one that you did last week, was Module 4, where you had to complete the assessment, but you didn't have to submit anything. Again, the same thing with this one. These IRIS modules, I rely heavily on them as part of your not only assessment, but for you to get a deeper understanding to the topics we're covering and the content and how it's related to the course objectives. This one is family engagement, so please make sure that you watch this, specifically on collaborating with parents who have children with disabilities. So this is important. Make sure you do the assessment, but you do not submit it. The next thing you're going to do, which is for a grade, is you're going to complete a discussion board. Okay, so I have an article here for you that's named Guidelines for Successful Peer Involvement. This was written by Margaret Windsor. This specifically came out of the Handbook of Special Education, the SAGE Handbook. This is an article written in there. I know it's dated, but it's a great resource nonetheless, so I do want us to read it. And then when you're done, you're going to complete the discussion prompts. Now, I've got 3 things here that I want you to answer in the discussion. I want you to really look at the article, and as you're going through, I want you to pick 2 or 3 concepts from that article that you feel is most important as a future educator. And I want you to explain why those stood out to you. The next thing is I want you to look at something maybe that you would need further clarification on, or that's still kind of unclear from reading the article. And then lastly, I want you to ask your classmates a question. So come up with a question as part of the reading, and ask it to your classmates. And the reason I put that third one on there is because I wanted to initiate discussion. They're going to be able to put their responses based on your question you ask them. Now remember, you do have to respond to your peers, at least 2 classmates' posts. I agree or good job will not earn you full credit. Again, you need to look at the reading assignment discussion rubric, or it states the criteria for responses. Okay, make sure you're engaging with their ideas. So when they ask you a question, engage with it when you answer. Share your additional thoughts. Ask further questions. Maybe you send a link or something you want to share as a resource. Remember, all of these things are ways for us to engage deeper. I also put here a Nearpod quiz review. This quiz review is going to ask you to join a Nearpod lesson. It's not necessarily a lesson, it's just a quiz review. So I ask you very short questions. It's a good way for you to gauge your feedback and get feedback and your understanding of Module 5. And I have the join code here for you. So that's another way to help you. Then you will take your Module 5 quiz. Okay, so remember, all of this content opens March the 3rd and it will close on Sunday, March the 9th. So just make sure you have the discussion board done by then, you have your quiz taken by then, as well as completed your IRIS module. All right, that covers all of Module 5. It is only going to be 1 week long, so just keep that in mind. You do not have 2 weeks to complete it. All right, guys, I hope that you have a great rest of your week. Until next time, take care.